Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is your host, John Thomas. Welcome back to the Jump In Podcast. Um, I'm excited. This is another week. As you can hear in the background, we're playing a little bit of Too Short, which is now the Philadelphia theme song for the Philadelphia Eagles. We're in an incredible playoff run, and as of this week, we just took out the Washington Commanders 55-23 to punch our ticket to the Super Bowl, baby. So, I'm excited. Everybody in the city is excited. We've had our little mini celebration, all right, just to get ourselves really clear that it was an accomplishment for us to get there. But we're not just settling with that. As everybody will tell you, we're going to keep the main thing the main thing. Our job is to go win that game. So by February 9th, 2025, trust and believe our Eagles are going to take home the victory, and we're going to have that great parade. And I'll be able to take my kids down Broad Street. So really, it's done amazing. It's incredible for our city. It was a great economic boon to have those home games here in Philadelphia, even for my little side hustles that I do. And also just a good feeling all around. You see people wearing their Eagles jerseys. As you see, I got one on today. We're wearing our hats. People got their coats. Everybody's just, doing it up. So you see all green attire all across the city. And it's just a good atmosphere to be in. It's a winning experience, and it's a winning atmosphere here in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. So we don't leave our sisters out. But what's important now. So today, episode, we're going to be talking about leaderships and leadership styles. There's probably about 10 different leadership styles that, are identified and that people can operate inside of. But there's probably about between 6 or 7 that are really effective and are necessary for, if you're someone who's out to, either elevate yourself as a leader, be someone who manages other folks' lives, or you're leading, a small Bible study. It doesn't matter who you are. Leadership is, everywhere, and people are always going to be asked to step into leadership, even if they haven't been formally identified as a leader. So knowing different styles and how to operate inside them, and when to choose what style to implement based on the circumstances that you're dealing with. So, for me, I was someone who, again, even as a child, I was a leader of others. I was chosen to do sermons, at 8 years old in my church. I was always a leader of whatever games we were playing. If it wasn't my older brothers, it was me, or my sisters, it was me, chosen from my little group of kids. And even in school, I excelled in academics, but I also was very creative and, performed in plays that I either written myself or, even Shakespeare, chosen as a lead actor in Macbeth at 4th grade. These are not things that I brag about. It's just to give you an idea of the kind of person that I was, and, how maybe I didn't understand at that time what the different leadership styles were that were effective for people. But I was clear now, as I look back on those experiences, that I moved through a lot of those different styles naturally. And so, again, it just gave me an opportunity to know that those things exist for people, and then also just share them with you. So what are those styles, and how do you get to choose them? But before I share what those styles are, I just want to share with you, when I started 2025, a lot of people create like resolutions or things they want to do, like joining the gym or whatever. I don't really, operate or believe that resolutions are effective. What I do is I look at what my system is that I've built over time and developed, and I keep looking for things that I can implement inside those systems, or key pieces that can be added, or even things to need to be subtracted that will help make my systems perform better, right? Not just my, business life, but also in my personal, my relationships, the things that I commit myself to. And the first thing that I put, which is always probably going to be one of the first things that I put, is to wake up and walk in my purpose daily. Wake up and walk in my purpose daily is number one on a list of 25 things for 2025 to implement in my systems. And what does that look like? Well, it looks, different in different aspects of my life, but where the foundation for that comes from is I've read, many different books on leadership, many different books on even purpose. The to me, the expert in that field and the number one person who's been instrumental in the development of my own personal um, mantra is Dr. Myles Munroe, who is um, a pastor in Bahamas, and he grew up there in the islands, but he, became an educated individual who wrote many different books on the concept of purpose, on the concept of relationships, and as a pastor and a leader of the church, he was also very instrumental in, setting some of the foundational points from a Christian-based standpoint, which is, again, you can, I don't care what faith you believe in, those who have been given the gift of leadership know that they may focus in their faith, and they may have their spiritual life and their faith life guide them, but the principles that they operate inside of and the things that he shared in his books and through his public speaking could motivate and move anyone. And so I invite you all to do your research and learn about Dr. Myles Munroe. And one of the books that I read early in my development was Pursuit of Purpose. And so again, it gives, in that he quoted, that the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life without a purpose. Life with the wrong priorities. Life's greatest challenge is in knowing what to do. And the greatest mistake in life is to be busy, but not effective. Life's greatest failure is to be successful in the wrong assignment. Now, when I read that, again, I was early in my career. I had just come back from the military, and I had, started actually going to college full time. But at the same token, I started developing, these activities for kids, which, started with a little flag football league, which I thought that was all it was ever going to be. But that, turned into me, kids would show up for football practice and I tell them to go run 10 yards and they didn't know what 10 yards was. Right. So I had to, we had to create some educational pieces to this puzzle. And, football season is during the academic year. So again, that led us to identifying tutors that could help these kids with their academics. And we started a tutoring program. The next thing you know, we're finding out their parents don't know how to help them with their homework because many of them didn't graduate high school. So then that had them, we had to add a program for GED and helping them get their high school diploma. And before you know it, that one thing of, working with those kids in that program turned into developing an actual, fully operating community center that over the course of, the years that it operated, we had 15 standing programs and we were serving over 3,000 unduplicated people every year. And that, was really, inside of, me identifying what my purpose was in this life, and which is to make a difference in the lives of others. That's a very simple conversation to be in. It was easy to remember whenever I got, frustrated, to just, stay focused on my purpose and knowing that purpose, as a believer myself, was blessed, right? I was living not just my purpose, but serving inside of his purpose. And his purpose for my life was what was clear when it came down to the things and the activities that I took on. Because everything that I took on, took on a life of its own. I learned how, I didn't, when I first started in nonprofit work, I was a student in college just out of the military. And what did I know about grants and funding? I knew that there was a grant you could get for college, right? Pell Grants. I knew those because I had one, but I didn't know anything about nonprofit work. I didn't know, the difference between nonprofit or for profit. I knew that companies operated. I knew what they were, but this was a whole new animal. And so, but because I was focused on my purpose, which was to make a difference in the lives of others early on, it just mushroomed. Everybody was committed to this, jumping in on the things that we were creating. And part of that was knowing that there was me learning and developing myself in these different in my leadership, right? I had to actually find new ways to engage people where they were and get them excited about things where I was. And so how I did that, was just, again, learning myself, elevating my own personal development along with my professional development, right? And, reading that book, Pursuit of Purpose, gave me a real clear understanding of how powerful, when you really stand in what your purpose is and how that, people get excited about that. People get, encouraged by it. And they also want to do whatever they can to help support you in that. So if you haven't figured out what your purpose is in your life, or you may be unclear that, maybe you're pursuing different purposes and you're not sure how to focus in on what the priorities are, like Dr. Munroe said, you want to make sure that you continue to develop yourself as a leader and know that there are different leadership styles that are required for different circumstances, different situations, and even different individuals, right? So what are those leadership styles? I said there's probably about 10 that exist, but there's really about 6 that are most effective and most common, right? So that leaders move between. So, if you learn these 6 or 7 different styles, you want to know them all. But if you just focus in on the 6 that are the primary ones that are effective both in life, in business, in your relationships, then you'll be okay, right? And then the whole point of life is to continue to learn. You never want to stop being someone who's, hungry to learn new things, not just about the world that you live in, but also about your own self. So I'm a lifelong learner. I'm someone that reads constantly. Right now, I've read several different books in the area of leadership. One of my favorites is Dr. John Maxwell. He's written many different books, but the ones that started me in my leadership journey was Developing the Leaders Around You, which is the first book I read of his, which was exciting. And then I went back and read some of his others, like Developing the Leader Within You, which he wrote before the other book that I read. But, it didn't matter because the things that I learned in both of those books helped me to be a great coach. When I wasn't even a professional coach, I was coaching Little League. I was coaching flag football. I was coaching, parents to get their GED and their education. I was coaching young people to study and do homework. I was coaching my employees that I hired and volunteers to help me, achieve the vision of this organization that we started. And so all of that came from me taking on, learning the lessons that were available from the leaders that were already out there and who were willing to share their message. And they did that through these books that I encourage you to pick up if you have a chance. And another one that I read, which is, where I am right now, is, Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life. That's a book that's on my shelf right now. It's the one I'm currently reading through again and, keeping myself refreshed around why I do what I do. Because, again, I want you to know my life isn't perfect. I've had, very high highs and some very low lows. And even in the lowest of points, in the lowest of times when things weren't going exactly as I wanted them to, I knew because I have been operating inside of what my purpose is, and I knew what his purpose was for my life, those two things, kept me encouraged. But at the same token, I had to look at what was missing. I had to find something, there, I wasn't satisfied that I could know all that I needed to know to help me get, from where I was circumstantially to where I wanted to be, which was, inside of my goals and my dreams. And, those books really helped, and they continue to help make a difference. So I invite you to pick up a book that, can help develop you personally. I've given you a couple recommendations to start from, but it's up to you. It depends on you making a decision. As a matter of fact, I take that out, scratch that word out of the book, because decisions means that you're just, going to kill off some other option. You don't need to do that. You don't need to make any more decisions. You need to choose. And when you choose, for your life, if you choose, to identify what your purpose is, if you choose to identify, who are those people that are like-minded, and engage and circle yourself with those type of folks so you can develop your winning attitude and develop it and maintain it over time, and surround yourself with people who have like-minded thoughts and feelings. But also, don't be afraid of those who differ from you. Don't be afraid of listening to other people's, what I consider the other side of the coin, right? So there's two sides to a coin. You might be on the head side, but that tail side is also a part of the same coin. So you want to be present to what the tail's options are, or what people's other opinions are on the opposite side, just so you can actually, choose powerfully at the end of the day, like where you're going to go and what direction you're going to take. And like I said, having a very clear purpose, and then really being, driven in the pursuit of that purpose, will help to make the world that you live in, the things that are most important to you, and the activities that you engage in, and other folks that you're surrounded by. It'll just elevate all of that, right? So again, I invite you to take that on. Now, let's talk about leadership. Leadership has many different qualities to it, but these, the thing that's been written, that is research that's been done about the various leadership styles that exist. And I'll go through really quickly just what those leadership styles are. But before I tell you that, there was an article written called Leadership That Gets Results by a guy named Daniel Goleman, right? It was first introduced back in 2000. So you can just, Google it and try to find it yourself. But it explains, what those leadership styles are and when to use each one. And so again, you don't have to recreate a wheel. The wheel's already been invented. It's already been perfected. It's actually pretty good when you just start, from where you are, using the tools that are already out there. And so again, this information is driven by data, not by emotion, right? So again, I'm not talking about things that only John talks about. I'm talking about things that are data driven, that have been researched by others. And I'm just smart enough to know how to incorporate them in my daily, weekly life. So, the common leadership styles and how to identify the right style for you, whether it's transactional or whether it's transformational, bureaucratic or laissez-faire. Those are all different leadership styles. And you want to know that, according to Goleman, you want to make sure that whatever style that you use is best for whatever the situation is. So you got to know what the styles are. You got to understand when they come into play. And it's also good to know what other, once you know what your styles are that you default to, what are the other styles that other people are operating inside of? So you know exactly why you're getting either push or pull from those people that are on your team, or your employees, or the volunteers, depending on who they are. As long as you are dealing with people, you are going to be dealing with these different leadership styles, because every single person defaults to one or two of these styles on a daily, weekly basis, right? And being a leader means recognizing that the different circumstances may call for different approaches. Now, what are those styles? Well, one of them is coercive leadership style. Now, what's coercive? Well, it entails demanding immediate compliance, just like the word says. You are literally, you say what there is to do and people do it, right? There's also authoritative leadership style, which is about mobilizing people towards a vision, right? There's what we call pace setting leadership style, which involves expecting excellence and self-direction. There's affiliative leadership style, which centers around building emotional bonds with people. There's democratic leadership style, which you think, also is great with small teams, which involves just creating consensus. And then there's coaching leadership style, my favorite, right? Which focuses on developing people for their future. Now, there are more than those styles that exist, but those pretty much are the main ones that operate inside of. And there's others I'll show, to talk about. There's, more detail about each and every one of them. Like, you would want to know, like, okay, coercive, it sounds negative, but there's a reason why it exists, right? And why you'd want to know it, because of all the leadership styles, coercive is the least effective in most situations, according to Coleman, right? And it's not difficult to understand why. The style is characterized by, a top-down decision-making approach, an authoritative approach, and it's demanding. So again, it's like a do what I say kind of attitude, and most people really um, don't react well to that type of leadership. And you could probably see why it might yield short-term results, because you may need, sometimes you need people to just do what you need them to do, because you might be under a tight time crunch, or there's a specific way, or, even surgeons, right? They scalpel, no time to think, hand it. So that's an example of an effective time to use a coercive leadership style, right? Then there's authoritative, and the difference between authoritative leadership style and coercive, right? The authoritative leadership style is not to be confused with authoritarian leadership. There's a difference, right, between authoritative leadership and an authoritarian leader, right? Authoritative leadership involves motivating your team members by connecting their work to a larger organizational strategy. It also has you helping them understand how their day-to-day tasks contribute to the greater good, or the bigger vision of whatever it is you're operating inside of. So you want to know that is different than someone who's an authoritarian. Okay, and then there's one of authoritative, sometimes can be one of the most effective leadership styles, because again, it also inspires people to know that what they're doing is not just some mundane task, or they're not just some cog in a wheel, but they're really contributing to the greater good. And no better example of that has been for me watching my Eagles and play, right? But I'm watching them play, but I'm also behind the scenes looking at how they run their organization. I mean, from the top down, it's structured for success. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan. I'm saying that because I paid attention to, the moves that their leadership team makes, the ownership, and their commitment to, their fan base, right? So having, the opportunity to, be someone who coaches professionals for a living, you pay attention to other organizations and what styles they operate inside of, and which ones produce the most desired results. And again, that you can find an example of authoritative leadership by organizations that remind people of what the mission is, or what the purpose of things are. And I choose that a lot when it comes down to when I'm working with my individual clients, because sometimes they forget why they even chose, what they're doing, or why they wanted to do it. And so my job is to remind them and encourage them to get back in action around the things that they're committed to when they see themselves falling short. Another leadership style is called pace setting. Pace setting leadership style, it's a focus on failures rather than successes. The constant push for productivity and results can also create a what's called a pressure cooker work environment, right? And the extreme focus on perfection can also make it difficult for your team members to see how their individual efforts fit into the bigger picture, which can lead to increased turnover. So if you ever look at organizations that are operating when they got people that are coming and going out the door all the time, or maybe they don't stick around, most likely the leadership style that's being implemented is a pace setting. they're out to produce results. They're not really interested in, so much developing the leaders around them, but more importantly, getting the most out of the people they have when they have them, right? And again, you don't want to take any of these conversations or these things that I'm sharing as a negative. They all have a reason why they exist, and they all can serve a purpose in various circumstances if you learn the different styles and you implement them when they're necessary and where they're necessary. Next style is what's called an affiliative leadership style. And the leadership style that's affiliative, it involves building strong emotional bonds, creating a sense of camaraderie and team spirit, and fostering a positive and supportive work environment. This helps your team members feel like they belong, can freely share ideas and feedback, and work together towards common goals. And according to Goleman, this relationship-oriented style is especially valuable in shaping a positive work environment. Of course, if you're engaging people and you're getting their feedback, getting their opinions on things, they feel like they're a part of it, and they feel like they have, skin in the game. And you want to, make sure that, when it's time for you to bring people together, that's a style that you want to start to look at as a way to, have people celebrating their wins, as I call it, right? And what's important now. The next style, which is the democratic leadership style. And, the first thing people see and hear the word Democrat now, it's a negative connotation in the political environment. But when it comes down to a leadership style, it is what it says. It's democracy in the style of leadership, right? The democratic leadership style involves empowering your team to have a voice in its decision making. It's also by taking time to, get others' feedback, listen to other ideals, or, giving people opportunities to voice their concerns or their different perspectives, right? And you want to make sure that people's voices get to be heard, their contributions are valued. And so when people are operating in a leadership or a democratic leadership style, they feel that they have a sense of ownership and responsibility to whatever it is that they're tasked with. And this style is ideal when you're unsure about the best course of action. So if you don't know which way to go and you don't have all the answers, especially if you're inside of a crisis environment, it's best to engage other people. You never know where the great idea is going to come from, and it could be one of the people standing around you. And then the last style that's most effective that I use on a daily, weekly, minute-by-minute basis is the coaching leadership style. And the coaching style is focused on individual growth. In my career, in my work, in the work that I do with other clients, this is very important for me to operate inside because I'm not there to press my agenda or to tell people how to do things. They already have, as a coach, I already know they already have it within them to do whatever it is that they need to do or whatever they want to accomplish. My job is to just keep them on track, hold them to account, or even give them direction, inside of areas that they can operate or improve upon, right? And then they go do the work. So, this also involves dedicating time to understand what your team members' long-term goals are. What is their personal and professional development, vision for themselves and what they want to do. And the best way to get about that is to ask questions. I'm always asking questions. I'll ask questions until I'm blue in the face. And I'll, make sure that, I'll ask questions like, so what do you want from your life, your career, your work? What do you want from your relationships? Who do you want to be in this moment? I can ask questions about anything that people talk about. And it's inside of this coaching leadership style that people start to uncover, or they may discover things about themselves or about the issue they're focused on or the challenges they're facing. And, they find the actions, they find ways to make things happen because, on their own, which means that they now, feel empowered by it, and they feel less like, that they've been told what to do, which, if anybody knows me, my kids know worst thing you could do, my pet peeve is telling me what to do. I hate people telling me what to do. I'll listen, I'll take your advice, but please, if you ever want to push a button with me, just go into that mode of telling me what to do, that authoritarian leader, right? It doesn't work for my type of personality, because as a coach, I'm always looking for ways to, inquire and to find out and, learn, not just for myself, but for other people. So trying, to build a coaching relationship. You're great at XYZ, but when you do XYZ, this is you pointing out things that might not work for them, so they can actually see it for themselves if they haven't been able to, right? Discover it. So those are the 6 that I wanted to share with you. And again, there's more that I can say about that, but I'll just leave you with, again, Dr. Munroe and a quote that he shared. And it helps me to really stay focused on that path of being a leader that continuously looks at, who do I need to be for this group of people? Who would I need to be for this person? Who do I need to be for myself, right? In the moments that are challenging to me, or even as a father, as someone who's, a family member, right? I can always look for ways to improve upon the different ways that I use those styles. But I will tell you, those things, came a little bit naturally to me even before I understood the research behind them. But they've been very clear for me since I've been able to study different leaders around. And Dr. Myles Munroe is one of those who I will always, even in his, he died in a plane crash, him and his wife, unfortunately, back in 2014, and we lost a great leader. Because he had already put out all these books. He already put out all these tapes and messages. This is before, there was social media allowing you to see everybody and everything. So you can research him, but he even in his death, he said, his greatest quote was, "Don't die old, die empty. That's the goal of life. Go to the cemetery and disappoint the graveyard." And I was just like, wow, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be a life, worth living, or a life fully, engaged in the pursuit of purpose, right? And to be spent, to be used up, to go to the grave with nothing left to offer. You've given it away. And so I thank you all, for allowing me to come into your lives even through this podcast. This Jump In podcast was, for me, an opportunity to engage with people who may, come across this message. I know there's like many different versions of podcasts that people can choose from. Hopefully there's an audience that's looking for this message. And I'm going to be here each and every week, hoping that you'll jump in and with your questions, with any comments. I will hope that you would subscribe to our channel. You can find us on all the different platforms, from Spotify to iHeartRadio to Apple Podcasts, Goodcast. We're out there. So just look for, the Jump In with Coach John, and you'll find us on where you enjoy finding your podcast information. So I'll leave you with my favorite phrase: go win the games you play.